The first Jurassic Park was released in 1993 under the direction of Steven Spielberg, based off of the novel written in 1990, just 3 years before, by Michael Crichton. Jurassic Park did wonders to the science fiction industry. I mean, look! Dinosaur! Look! It's all about dinosaur, big cool dinosaurs. Specifically, genetic engineered dinosaurs made to be looked at by tourists because, oh my god, dinosaur, real.
It's a dinosaur.
Really cool to see how this movie was made, especially with the 1990s limitations. The acting is phenomenal, the effects are phenomenal, especially back then. The writing is still, to this day, phenomenal. Maybe beyond phenomenal. I loved Jurassic Park when I was a wee little kid. Still, one of the best movies in my personal best movies Aiden has witnessed in his lifetime so far list. Some scenes I never really understood as a kid, and this is what we're going to be focusing on. I was like, okay, this is lame, where are the dinosaurs? But looking back, after I was older, I realized how complicated and complex and fascinatingly interesting this movie's messages are. The plot of this movie is really simple. Basically, a few scientists get invited to a remote island where this old rich guy, John Hammond, has accomplished bringing dinosaurs back to life, and things sure do go wrong even after the countless attempts of saying it won't. Because of this guy, good old pal Dennis, he's like, wow, let me take some dinosaur DNA and sell it. I can get rich off of this. Cool. Easy dub. For the average person watching this movie, it's clear that Dennis is the main villain here. Dennis wants to profit off of Hammond's success. He wants to exploit for his own personal gain. But as a child, I glossed over the other true intentions from John Hammond especially. I always knew the guy was kind of off. I never really understood why he was off, but it was just strange to me. For example, in the novel John Hammond, this guy behind everything business in the park is a con man.
It's more prevalent in the original novel, where John Hammond cuts corners at every opportunity, and that's why the dinosaurs escape, because he builds it as cheaply as possible as a scam.
Why would you only have one guy on security for your entire park? It's that's the point.
They explain it where Needry says, could anyone else have done the job for the price that I quoted? On their own. Which means John Hammond hired the cheapest guy to do it and is underpaying the shit out of him.
You think that kind of automation is easy? Or cheap? You know anybody who can network 8 connection machines and debug 2 million lines of code for what I bid for this job?
Which is why he goes and gets the dinosaur embryos to sell, because he's like, f*** my boss.
And in the movie, he's more subtly arrogant. Hammond just repeatedly ignores the danger coming from the people who know what they're talking about.
Yeah, don't you see the danger, John, inherent in what you're doing here? Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could that they didn't stop to think if they should.
Condors. Condors are on the verge of extinction. If I was to create a flock of condors on this island, you wouldn't have anything to say.
No, hold on. This isn't some species that was obliterated by deforestation or the building of a dam. Dinosaurs had their shot, and nature selected them for extinction.
Well, the question is, how can you know anything about an extinct ecosystem? And therefore, how could you ever assume that you can control it?
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You're meant to come down here and defend me against these characters, and the only one I've got on my side is the blood-sucking lawyer.
Thank you.
I think the real moral of the story here, which our childlike selves did not understand at the time, exploitation in politics. Best summed up by this random YouTube comment. The line that always stuck out to me was when Ian said, "Before you even knew what you had." That is a key line. John Hammond didn't even know what he was unleashing into the world. He just thought the idea of dinosaurs today would be magnificent, a spectacle for all, the 8th wonder of the world. John Hammond thought like a showbiz man, without even considering the proper scientific research or consulting the biologists and paleontologists. He couldn't even see the error of his ways until it was too late. Hammond in the early scenes sides with his lawyer, who talks about money and this big dream, and the scientists who have done their research and were constantly exposing themselves to the knowledge of what their goddamn scientist label was for are explicitly ignored. Man, does that ring a bell to you?
Gavin Cato and Yankel Rosenbaum have continued to haunt the city. Dinkins' political future would be determined by how he handled things it was. He lost re-election for a second term.
And the risk of serious disease among the American public also remains low.
It will go away, just stay calm. We're in great shape compared to other places. I think we've done a great job in the sense that we were early.
Community transmission happening in the United States in early January. The travel restrictions didn't go into effect until late January, early February. By that point, coronavirus was probably all over the United States.
Anti-maskers, people who, against the wide consensus of public health experts, either want to limit mask wearing or are against them completely.
Across the country, some hospitals bracing for the worst, beds filling up with patients, critical supplies in some cases running dangerously low, and healthcare workers afraid they will have no way to protect themselves.
I'm joined by Dr. Stephen Rosenthal. He's a pediatric endocrinologist and the medical director of the Child and Adolescent Gender Center at the University of California, San Francisco. And so what is the science? What does the evidence show us about that kind of care?
The practice that we follow is not out of the blue. It is really based on what are referred to as clinical practice guidelines and standards of care, which are evidence-based. In fact, there are more than 25 years of published scientific evidence that support these guidelines. I think I could highlight one particular study that was published just 2 months ago in the Journal of Adolescent Health, that access to gender-affirming care, in particular sex hormones such as testosterone and estrogen to eligible adolescents, that this led to a significant decrease in depression, suicidal ideation, and suicide attempts.
Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely.
Under the new state rule, which is now in effect, minors who have gender dysphoria will no longer be able to make changes to their body if they want to transition.
LGBTQ teens who have considered suicide is rising, already more than 3 times the national average.
A study found that transgender adolescents attempt suicide at a much higher rate.
Now to the abortion case that has gained international attention after a 10-year-old rape victim from Ohio was taken to Indiana for the procedure.
This movie is a thought-provoking masterpiece if you look at it in a morally filled perspective. Like we talked about in class, there's ingredients to a rooted issue. Greed and people of authority is one of the ingredients. Not to say that minority groups or other certain people groups are genetically engineered dinosaurs that will turn to violence to protect themselves at all costs, but to say that there will always be a chance for history to repeat itself. But it doesn't always have to be like that. If we listen and fight for education and the importance of open-mindedness and trust in the people who know what they're talking about. Thanks, Jurassic Park, for this epic lesson and analysis of the human species. But no thanks to you, Jurassic World, which can be summed up by the critical drinker.
Jurassic World is a bit like the Terminator franchise. It's a great concept, but you can only do so much with it before you start rehashing the same ideas over and over again. And that's where we're at now with both franchises. They simply need to stop. They're proof that if you've got nothing new and original and smart to add to an old idea, then do the world a favor and don't add anything.
I'll tell you the problem with the scientific power that you're using here. It didn't require any discipline to attain it. You know, you read what others had done, and you took the next step. You didn't earn the knowledge for yourselves, so you don't take any responsibility for it. You stood on the shoulders of geniuses to accomplish something as fast as you could, and before you even knew what you had, you patented it and packaged it and slapped it on a plastic lunchbox, and now you're selling it. You want to sell it. Well,